Welcome to It's All About Connection, NVC with Dr. B.
This podcast is exploitative. Cindy likes to make me look like an asshole, like a dumb asshole.
All
On this
right.
podcast, we had a listener write to us, and I didn't fully understand it. And Cindy was like, "Wait, let me read it so I can figure it out first." And then I was like, "Well, wait a minute. I don't fully understand it, but you got to read it twice." And she was like, "Well, let's just go ahead and use you and your stupidity as fodder for this episode."
I
And this
am
was
having a
all
different reality around how this just happened. Maybe we need to have a discussion instead of talk about the letter.
yes, I'm in story, but it's mostly playful story.
Well, the truth of the matter is, I think the observation is I did read you. Okay, the observation is I have this email that came from somebody from Poland who I know, who's been a student of mine for a long time, who I'm very appreciative of, sent me this email. And I responded to it. I wasn't fully understanding, but I responded to it in what I thought was what the question was. And then he responded again. And so I've seen it a few times. Heather has not, in fairness to Heather. And so I read it again. It's been a couple weeks since I've read this. I read it again to Heather right now. And then Heather didn't understand it, but I did. And then I said,
And you said, "I'm ready to go now."
well, just because I thought the fact that I would now understand it, I can explain it a little bit, because I think when I read it to folks that other people might not fully understand it, and it wasn't just because I read it and, ooh, I'm so smart, now I get it. Like, I have a little background. I read it first, I responded, and he responded back. And I read it again while you were in the bathroom, by the way, and then I read his response. So I just have more. I was
You
going
have
to say
more
I have
understanding and context, and I get to be your test dummy.
more. Oh, I don't even know how to respond to that. Okay, can I just read the darn thing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, already in 3 minutes here. All right, so this was the first email. Hi, I have a question/doubt. Maybe you can help me. Maybe you can make a podcast about it. We're doing that right now. What is the relationship between setting borders, he said, and NVC, but I think he was meaning boundaries, okay? I think I have heard all your podcasts, and I believe it was mentioned a few times, but I don't remember exact explanation. The question is, we need boundaries. That's one of our basic needs, question mark. The boundaries are lines which we don't agree anyone to pass. And number 3, the lines may mean some kind of behavior, but also some kinds of words or some methods of communication. In, quote, regular life with no NVC, the person with strong boundaries doesn't agree for some kind of communication. Like, I don't agree you to call me this. I don't agree for you to that kind of speaking, etc. It's not easy, but at least you know what's your target to set boundaries and protect them. But in NVC life, which is a blessing and a curse, he said, we do know that anything that people say is either always a please or a thank you. That's from Rosenberg. So there's no reason to set boundaries on please, even if it's expressed very disguised form, like an F word, blame, curse, name, judgment, anything. Since I try to practice NVC life, I think it's better, question mark, to allow any type of communication, question mark. Is it logical to let people talk anything they need, but does it not meet my need, for emotional safety? How to solve this puzzle? I'm not sure if I'm clear. If needed, I'm happy to explain. If you see my problem, then I would love to hear your opinion and suggestion how to solve it. Hugs from Canarian Island. That was the point when Heather said, I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah,
Even Heather.
it's getting jumbled with I have a very loose understanding
Okay.
of what he's saying.
Well, I mean, in fairness to you, Heather, I think you must be much smarter than me because it took me a few times through and some back and forth with my friend from Poland to kind of get a sense of what he's asking. But I think what he's saying in a nutshell is, and friend in Poland, I don't know if you want me to use your name, so I'm not. Uh, if I'm getting this wrong, you can write me again. Uh, I think what he is saying is that, like, if you don't know NVC, you set your boundaries. Like, you can say, no, I don't like it when you talk to me like that, or don't use that F word with me. Like you set your boundaries. But if
Mhm.
you know NVC, you're supposed to be like interpreting things into giraffe language, no matter what anybody says, right? So,
Mhm.
like, is it like what happens with boundaries? Is there no place for boundaries? Because ideally you're able to like rise above and hear everything in terms of a please or a thank you. And so, does that mean that other people can say whatever they want to say, and you end up mourning emotional safety because you're interpreting everything as a please or a thank you,
And that you
right?
don't get to have these quote unquote boundaries.
Correct. That's what I think that's was his question, and he's wondering about that. Like, how does that fit into the NVC scheme?
Yes,
Yeah,
I think I understand.
yeah,
And I would say, even the term boundary is a judgment.
yeah. Yeah, it's hard to fully understand, but I guess it's some things that will are acceptable, like beyond like that you're willing to maybe like not like accommodate needs not being met because of boundaries or not, like putting the line there, something. I know it is. Yes, I agree. But you're not willing to put up with certain things, basically.
Yeah, I think that's
Not-
the gist of it. And I mean, I think, if you were to say, I don't like this thing, I don't accept this kind of behavior, that could be translated in NVC to, I really mourn emotional safety. I'm really wanting emotional safety. So it's just like using the needs that you're mourning or you're wanting as a means to say or quote unquote set a boundary.
Right, but I think for him, it's not about like he's saying the other people that don't know NVC, they have an easier time setting boundaries because they're not trying to translate. He's struggling as being the NVC person. What does he do to set boundaries as the NVC person? Or is it not appropriate, quote, to set boundaries if you're the NVC person? Because you're supposed to be giving and listening and hearing everything as a please and a thank you. So therefore, you don't need to set boundaries because you're looking past the words of what somebody is saying. I think that's
Oh
what he's
yeah.
saying here.
This
Yeah.
is the eternal quandary of NVC.
Yes, except I do think that there is something to say about this. That
Mhm.
so it's not a quandary because yes, that would
It
be
seems
the
like a quandary.
well, it does seem like a quandary if you're only thinking that NVC is only about empathy, right?
Mhm.
I mean, ideally, I guess you have several ways you can move with this. Ideally, you stay in empathy with that person that's maybe overstepping what your boundaries are in the moment for emotional safety, right? Maybe you're able to be the bigger person in that moment and just listen with giraffe ears and listen for the please and the thank you. Um, to the point ideally that person then has more space to actually hear you, and when you can use a connecting request and move over to the expression part of the model, because NVC is not just empathy, it's empathy and expression, it's both of those things, right? Ideally. So if you can get over to the expression side where that person now is able to hear you, that's the place. That's the place and time to be able to share about, um, I feel worried sharing this with you because I want there to be, openness, and I want there to be emotional safety for you in hearing this. But when you said F you to me last week, I felt really upset in that moment. And what came up for me was like a huge need for kindness. I do have a, a pretty like kindness is a really huge value for me, and I wonder if that were to happen again, if I'm able to just let it go. I don't know, because kindness is that big of a thing for me. Like, I think in that situation, that's when you can talk about your boundaries with that person. But ideally, after you've given empathy and you're moving on over to the expression line.
Yeah, so just it sounds like working the process, and it is a reminder to know that there's always room for, quote unquote, always room for expression. It's not just staying in empathy with someone else and maybe their boundaries that they've set.
Right. And also, you might not, maybe that person is never willing to hear you, because that's a real thing that happens, right? So that's when you're having to step out. Then you have several options. If that person doesn't want to hear you, you can resort to saying "fuck you" back to them, okay, which is surely not going to get you to connection, more than likely. You can wait. Why am I talking? What am I thinking? You can step over onto that side of the dance floor and do some work to help free yourself, to have more space to stay in the game with that person and hopefully show up to be able to hear. And, or you could just express anyways. And ideally, you stay with expressing with observation, feelings, and needs and requests, keeping it really non judgmental. So you do have some options there. I like the very first example where all goes well and you give empathy even to this person that's saying "fuck you," and you're really able to hear the please and the thank you, and then that person then has more ability to hear you, and you get to express how hard that was for you and the boundary that you want to set going forward. Um, that to me is the cleanest. Let's tie it up with a pretty bow, and use that example. But the truth of the matter is, it doesn't always work out. It doesn't always shake out like that. And in those circumstances, that's when you have to turn to either throwing out NVC and resorting to old way that, again, I don't think that usually works too well, or using weight, d- doing some work on self, so you continue to grow some more capacity and ability to hold space for other and get your needs met in other ways from other people, that need for kindness or emotional safety, and mourn in this circumstance you may not have it. And then using those expression skills is another possibility. So I don't think that you have to throw your boundaries out when you are an NVC person, that you just let it go and everybody can have a heyday with you because you're always listening with those giraffe ears. I haven't figured out how to do that yet. I still think, I think the boundary setting happens ideally when you go to express. And and if you just go to express, and that other person hasn't you haven't gotten to the place where that person is experiencing some openness, and because they just were hurt a whole bit, maybe that's another place where you may have to mourn some things, around kindness from yourself, or you know um, emotional safety maybe for the other person, because you are setting those boundaries. It's not This is not at all about you're just a doormat, basically, and you let anybody say anything that they want to you, and you just always hear them and listen with needs, and that's it. Doesn't I don't think it
Mhm.
works that way.
Yeah, there's room for expression and setting boundaries the NVC way.
Exactly. Which is a lot better than, in my opinion, a lot better than saying, "Don't ever say F you to me," as
Mhm.
opposed to when you said F you, I was scared, and what came up for me was huge safety. I needed safety big time in that moment. That's a lot different than saying, "Don't ever say which I think is the way that people that don't know NVC, that's how they usually approach it,
Yeah, kind of in those maybe more quote unquote harsh terms.
More demand. It comes out
Demand.
as it's a
Yeah.
demand. Yeah, it's a demand, typically. I mean, we're talking how do you say that word?
Generalities.
Thank you. See, you are the smarter one, Heather. You could say a word like that, and I cannot. On that note,
I guess
anything
it's
else?
proven now.
It is totally proven, except that also for people that are watching this on YouTube, you are not really even a person. You're just a circle with the voice coming from you because your video is still not working.
Still not working.
Still not working.
And if you do we feel complete? Feel
I
complete. That's
do.
not a feeling, but
Thank you. Yes, I think we are complete, except I always like to plug. Come join the intro. Yes, I promise you'll love it. I promise, promise, promise. And you'll learn so much, and you'll have so much connection, and you can continue on deepening your skills so that you know how to set those boundaries in a way that meet your needs for kindness and clarity.
you'll have fun and everything will be perfect and you'll never worry about anything else again or have conflict inwardly or outwardly in your life ever.
And yeah, and hopefully people know that you are just kidding. I wish it were that way. Is
Yes,
it
not
were
quite.
or was? Is it were or was? See, you're gonna
I
know the
think it's
answer.
were.
See, there you go. You're smarter than me again.
It is a beautiful judgment.
All right. What's the empathy warm line, which you tend to remember and I don't, which is another example of how you're smarter than me.
I think that just has to do with memory and also maybe our age difference.
Possibly.
So the warm line number is 850-706-0488.
Sorry. Can you say that again?
Did it cut me off? It seemed to go right after I said it.
Oh, I thought it cut you off.
No,
I didn't.
no. But I'll do
No?
it again. So the
Okay.
empathy warm line number is 850-706-0488.
Thanks all.
You've been listening to It's All About Connection, NVC with Dr. B. For more episodes and guest bios, please visit us at www.thebigbmethod.com. That's www.thebigbmethod.com. And remember, empathy first.